I'm really excited today to be able to be here and share with you a lot of the things that the R&D organization at Palo Alto Networks has been working on over the last year or so, since we were all last year. And just some really amazing product updates to be able to announce today with you, and I hope you'll be as excited about them as I am. And I'm even going to go a step further and break one of my own cardinal rules. And I'm going to give you a sneak preview of something we're working on that's not even ready yet, just because we think it's really important to give you a sense of some of the future that we're developing right now. Now, before I get into that, though, I want to set a little bit of context. Mark was talking about prevention, and we talk about prevention a lot, and I want to set a little bit of context that may help give you a sense of why we focus on the things we focus on, like why what is it we choose to do, and what are the things that we choose to ignore in order to provide the most value to all of you. And so whenever I'm faced with a really complex problem to solve, like prevention, which ultimately is very technically challenging and complicated and requires a lot of innovation and just constant focus, I always like to try to distill it down into as simple of a view as possible before we ultimately then make it complex again. And so in my mind, when I think about what would actually be required to accomplish prevention, it would look something like this. You would have to start by having complete visibility into everything, ideally, and because you can't secure what you can't see. From there, you would then start reducing that surface area of attack, encrypted tunneling applications and encrypted content and malicious apps and things that are designed to bypass your ability to provide security, all of that to get you to a point where you can then be in a good position to prevent anything you know to already be bad, and then from there, to be able to detect and prevent anything new and unknown that you've never seen before. And if you could do this, you would actually have a highly effective prevention outcome. Now, it's probably easier said than done. And in fact, when you break this down, each of these elements requires a lot of different capabilities, and each one of these capabilities requires a lot of work. It's complex to provide full application visibility and control. It's complex to do every one of the items or capabilities listed here, but each one's really important. Each one requires constant focus and innovation over time to be able to keep adapting, and this list actually keeps changing as well. It keeps getting bigger. And I think it's for that reason that the security industry historically has failed you. Historically, the security industry has looked at this, and I think they just said, oh, God, that looks hard. Maybe we should let some new startup come along and develop a new product to deliver the new capability you need. And then the next time you needed a new security capability, they said, well, last time it worked pretty well, let's let somebody else do this again. And in each subsequent time you need a new security capability, there's a new product there for you. And before you knew it, you had 10, 20, 30 different security products in your network, on your endpoint, and it was a mess. And ultimately, it didn't really work. And so when we look at this, we took a very different view of it. We said, what if it was possible to, instead of thinking of each capability as the need for a new product, what if we instead looked at them all as an integrated set of capabilities required to solve a problem called preventing attacks? And if we were really good at each of those capabilities, but even more than that, we natively integrated them together such that they all receive leverage and context from each other, and then we could package that up in such a way that we could then consistently apply it everywhere that your applications, users, and data exist. And we could do it all in a way where it was highly automated in order to be able to have sort of that prevention outcome. We think that would be really powerful, and that is what we did. That is the approach that we took 10 years ago, and over the last 10 years, we keep building and building upon that. And ultimately, the way we deliver that is in the platform. And so, lest you were thinking that the platform triangle was some sort of architecture thing, it's actually real. It's how we deliver these capabilities in a highly integrated and automated manner. okay? Now, one thing before I move on from this context of what we think is really important to what we're doing, I just want to give a call out to a couple of breakout sessions that we're running this week, specifically around how to take what I just talked about and turn that into security best practices with the hopes that all of you are able to enact a lot of these or all of these capabilities in your own environments. And so that's something that my team and other teams in the company have been working on over the last many months, is to be able to put that together in a highly consumable fashion as well, okay? Now, with this as context, there is a lot of stuff that we're announcing. We have a brand new PanOS and Panorama release, 7.1. We just uploaded it to the update servers yesterday. We're officially announcing it today. And even though this is what we would call one of our minor feature releases, there's well over 50 new features delivered in this release to both PanOS and Panorama. We have a number of new cloud and SaaS security updates. Global Protect has received, I think, close to 15 new capabilities to continue to extend what it's capable of doing. And a lot of updates to WildFire and AutoFocus, which, of course, because of the cloud nature, happen on a pretty quick cycle, but a lot of things to sort of get you caught up on of what we've been doing from our cloud-based architecture. So with that, I want to start on the cloud side. And if you kind of go back to what would it take to really do prevention, as I said, it all starts with having complete visibility into everything that's going on. And one of the biggest challenges that I think all of us have been facing over the last several years is the eroding perimeter that used to exist. I mean, this used to be a lot easier. You used to have this nice, happy enterprise network where everything was inside your walls, and you put your security stack at where it connected to the rest of the world, and maybe you had a few of those because you had different offices. And what's been happening over the last many years is that traditional perimeter has started to erode. It's moved into private cloud. It's moved up into public cloud infrastructure. It's moved off into SaaS applications. And then as your users get increasingly mobile, it kind of moves off your network with your users as they come on and off. Now, this has led to a lot of people saying that the perimeter doesn't exist. Bullshit. It's just in a different place. It's in more places. It still exists. It's also in the public cloud infrastructure. It's also out into your SaaS applications, and it also needs to be covering your entire user population, regardless of where they are. That's our view. I hope it's your view too, but it's definitely my view. And so with this as the setup, there's a lot of things we do to continue to focus, particularly on cloud. And cloud is really transforming where your applications live and how you secure them. And it brings in a number of new challenges, because in cloud architectures, things are different. And so the first challenge is just the pure diversity of clouds. The diversity of private cloud infrastructure, the diversity of public cloud infrastructure, the diversity of SaaS applications. It then gets a little bit harder because of the way in which you scale in these environments is very different. You scale horizontally, not vertically. And in all of these environments, it's highly dynamic and automated, and so you have to be able to fit into the orchestration layer in order to be able to understand what's going on and understand what you're securing. So a number of things that we've been doing in this regard and can share with you today. First, on the private cloud side. 2 years ago, I think I stood up here on stage and talked to you about VM series integrating with NSX, VMware's NSX orchestration platform, and all the things that was important for. And since that time, we've had great success with that architecture and continue to extend the capabilities. And with this latest release of PanOS and Panorama, we're now able to extend it into multi-tenant environments. We see this a lot even in enterprise deployments where you may have different departments with different policy needs, and certainly into hosting and MSSP environments where your tenants are actually multiple different customers, all of which, of course, need different policies as well. In addition to that, we have this view of wanting to be able to secure any cloud. We don't want to restrict what cloud infrastructure you're able to move your applications into. And so with this latest release, we're now supporting Hyper-V. So we're extending the private cloud environments we can support, and we're now supporting Microsoft Azure, in addition, of course, to AWS, which we've supported for a while now. All of this means you can have the same consistent security everywhere. Same automation, same central management, and even we've done something that is pretty unique, where the way in which we even license all of this, you actually get this level of investment protection because you can move, that license is not tied to the hypervisor that you're running VM series on. You can move it. If today you're running this in a Hyper-V environment, great. If you need to switch out to ESXi, no problem. If you need to move that up into the public cloud, go for it. It can move. Now, within public cloud, there's a number of different use cases that we continue to be focused on. We focus on being able to secure hybrid cloud environments where your infrastructure is extending into public cloud, potentially elastically, so it's moving up and down. Segmentation with these environments to make sure you can continue to segment the applications and tiers of applications. As a gateway, securing public-facing applications regardless of where they are. And one of my favorite use cases is as a global protect network, where as your users are moving around the world, even if you don't have global infrastructure, you can have global infrastructure because you can take the VM series, deploy it into AWS or Azure, SoftLayer, et cetera, and you can leverage the cloud for that scale and reach around the world. Only one quick comment on Azure. We're in the final stages of the certification process, so if you go to the marketplace today, you won't see it, but in about another week or two, you will. So that's coming very, very soon, all right? Now, in addition to all of that fun stuff, there's what I always like to term the boring but important stuff. Doesn't sound real sexy on the surface, but is actually really important. And whether it's bootstrapping, which is how we make it really easy to bring up a new VM series, which, by the way, extends to hardware as well. The open VM tools, so I'm sure some of you are probably saying, finally. We're supporting the VM tools capabilities, makes it a lot easier to integrate into your monitoring and operational environments. Offline licensing for NSX, which is nice, and then a bunch of, again, these are boring but important, management I/O changes, allowing the IP address to be set dynamically as opposed to having the fixed IP address, which probably gets under your skin every once in a while. Swapping interfaces, which makes it a lot easier to work in Amazon's elastic load balancing scenarios and things like that. All right? So a lot of stuff on cloud. Also sort of cloud-like is SaaS. Now, SaaS is different. In the world of SaaS, it is your data, but it's not your application. And so how you approach that is different. And actually, you have to take a step back and think about it from a perspective of there's lots of different kinds of SaaS. There's what we often refer to as sanctioned SaaS or enterprise SaaS. And this is SaaS applications that your teams have actually gone out and deployed and enabled for your users to use. So you're managing these. There's what then there's unsanctioned. And within unsanctioned, there's really two categories. There's true unsanctioned, which you probably don't want running in your network. And then there's what we've affectionately termed tolerated. This is the stuff that you probably would like to be able to block, but you really can't. Because it's necessary for users to be able to work with business partners or other folks outside your organization. So these aren't managed, but you have to allow them and you have to find a way to secure them. And so in order to deal with this, as with most things, it all starts with visibility. And so in this latest release of 7.1, with, again, both PanOS and Panorama, we've added a new SaaS application usage report. And what this basically does is it gives you a very holistic view across your entire enterprise of how your users are consuming SaaS applications, both sanctioned as well as unsanctioned. And as you can see from what is a component of the summary level, even how it compares to the rest of the application usage in your environment. So starts high level. It then drills down into the SaaS applications themselves and how they're being used. Which ones are the top by data transfer, which ones are the top by users, or top users as they are using these applications. Again, one level deeper to give you a better kind of overall view of how SaaS is being consumed across your enterprise. And then within that, being able to drill into each and every category of SaaS application. And what I'm showing you here is just one of those categories. So the file sharing applications. And as we do this, one thing you'll notice is not only will we show you the SaaS file sharing applications, but we'll give you a comparison to the non-SaaS versions as well. And this is because the non-SaaS versions can introduce just as much risk to your environment as the SaaS versions, right? If you have unauthorized FTP, which sounds really boring, but it actually happens a lot, that's actually a really big problem. To an attacker, that actually is easier for them to use, I think, than a lot of SaaS applications, and is more often used as a data exfiltration application. So it's important to be able to see these things side by side and make sure that all of them are being used appropriately. And just for fun, I gave you a snippet of what a university would look like as compared to what an enterprise would look like, and for a university, what constitutes SaaS. So really excited about this. Lots and lots of detail in this report. I'm just showing you a few snippets of information here. Now, within the enterprise or managed or sanctioned SaaS applications, you can go a step beyond that. And this is why Aperture exists. This is why we launched Aperture a few months ago. Leveraging the APIs that exist within these SaaS applications, we can actually reach into them and do a lot of very unique things. So we can look at the detailed content, understand it. We even give you the flexibility to define what kind of content is interesting to you. Then give you contextual control over what is allowed and not allowed in those environments. And of course, we tie that into the overall platform in order to be able to identify any threats that are potentially lurking in these applications and spreading across your user base. And so we're really excited about this particular new service just because it extends the platform into a set of applications that are really important. All right, we're making progress. Now I want to talk about Threat Intelligence Cloud. So this is what we collectively refer to as the threat services that we operate out of our infrastructure that are constantly making our firewalls and endpoints smarter all the time. And as I've come to really enjoy sharing with you every year here at Ignite, I want to start by updating you on the usage. Every year, I'm always really proud about the usage, and every other year I have to come back and tell you how the previous year I was wrong, that now it's really impressive, and so I get to do that again. You saw Mark talk about the customers, but the sheer usage of WildFire is just phenomenal. On a typical day now, we see over 5 million unique files coming up into WildFire. Last month, we processed over 100 million unique files. In addition to that, with the functionality we added back in PanOS 6.1, we're now processing over 250 million URLs. Unique URLs are being pulled out of emails and sent up into this cloud for us to find new malicious and phishing websites. And it's just phenomenal. And the reason I share this with you is because if you remember, one of the really important aspects of WildFire is the network effect or the community effect that it brings. Any one of you can send a new unknown file or URL up into this cloud environment, and when we detect, or if we detect that it's malicious, everybody else benefits from that, and vice versa. And so every time we add somebody new into this ecosystem, everybody benefits from that. And the more data we bring in, the more likely it is that you're going to be protected from an attack before you ever see it on your network. And so this scale is really important to the value and functionality that WildFire brings. And so one of the projects that we kicked off a little bit over a year ago and we completed in January is what we internally refer to as WildFire 2.0. And this is going to go in the category of boring but important. What we basically did is we revamped the entire back-end infrastructure of WildFire. From your perspective, nothing changed. In fact, when we did the cutover from the original infrastructure to this one, nothing happened, other than we completely set ourselves up to keep scaling into the future. And not just scaling from a capacity perspective, but scaling from a global perspective, making sure that we can be everywhere that we need to be in order to be collecting new unknowns from all of you and all of our customers in order to then making all of you safer. And so this was a very important project to set ourselves up for that future success from a scale perspective. In addition, with this latest release in 7.1, we've now added macOS 10 support. So when we started with WildFire several years ago, we started where you would obviously start, which is Windows. Windows is the biggest attack vector then, and it still is for sure. Over time, we added support for Android. We started seeing a lot more attacks against mobile devices, and we extended support to Android, and at the time we did that, we would see tens, maybe hundreds on a big day of malware against Android. And now we're up to thousands of Android malware every day that we're finding in WildFire. And as we extend support to Mac OS X, we're going to likely see that same thing. And one of the amazing things about this was when this was still in beta, we were able to detect and prevent a new ransomware campaign that was specifically targeting Macs. Now, what's interesting about this is a few things. One, the fact that we detected and prevented it with beta software. Testament to the engineering team and what they're able to build. Second was we were able to detect it early enough in the cycle that it actually was removed and taken down before the campaign even started. Somebody's really pissed at us right now for this. So very excited about extending operating system support. In addition to that, over the years of WildFire, we've progressively gotten better and better at the time from first detection to prevention. And when WildFire first came out, we started where you would probably expect us to start, which is sort of the industry norm 24-hour turnaround time. It's a 24-hour clock, in case you're wondering what that one looked like. About a year later, we had realized that 24 hours was not even close to being fast enough, and we reduced it down to every 60 minutes. And then 60 minutes started to feel kind of slow, so we reduced that down to 15 minutes a year and a half ago. And now, every 5 minutes, we have a new content update delivered out of the WildFire cloud in order to keep reducing the time from first detection somewhere in the world to complete prevention everywhere in the world. Very excited about that. Now, in addition to that, one of the really big sort of ongoing projects, and this is one that will never end, is this focus on both accuracy and coverage. And I pulled out all the stops on my artistic skills, and I drew you a seesaw. Now, why did I do this? Well, typically, from a security perspective, when you have a security capability, one of the things you're constantly battling is trying to have coverage and accuracy. And traditionally, or typically, this works like a seesaw. You can raise the coverage, and as you do that, your accuracy is going to go down. Well, you're good from a coverage perspective, but no one wants to turn you on because you detect all sorts of good stuff as bad, and you have these false positives, and that's a problem. So you flip it around. Your accuracy goes up, and your coverage goes down, and now you can turn it on, but you're not going to do a whole lot. And you're constantly in this sort of seesaw battle. Well, I think it was two and a half years ago, Nir and I were discussing this. We're like, well, this is stupid. We got to fix this. And so we sort of came up with this idea of how do we get both coverage and accuracy? How do we break the seesaw so that we don't have this constant battle back and forth? And as we thought about it, we came up with the answer. Actually, I think some of the smart engineers probably came up with the answer. We just told them to try to figure it out. And what it was is in some ways kind of elegant, although not necessarily easy, which was the way you break it is not through any one technique. The way you do it is by having multiple techniques that you can effectively multiply together. And ideally, these different techniques are good at different things, so non-overlapping in nature. And what we had started with WildFire was focused on dynamic analysis. How do we find a new piece of malware we've never seen before? And funny enough, one of the really key things to enhancing WildFire was to actually sort of take a step back and say, what about just variations of stuff we've seen before? Turns out static analysis is a much better technology for doing that. And then as we did that and we started creating more and more volumes of data, we said, we have a lot of data. What if we could use that combined with machine learning as another technique combined with dynamic analysis and static analysis? And so in putting together these multiple non-overlapping technologies, what we've been able to accomplish is that goal of coverage and accuracy. What we've seen from our measurements of this is that is approaching, although we understand we'll never actually fully get there, but approaching closer and closer to that goal of 100% coverage, while at the same time actually improving the accuracy of WildFire. And we're really excited about this because, for obvious reasons, the better the accuracy is, the easier it is for you to turn this on in prevention mode, automatically, constantly getting the updates. And the better the coverage is, the more that's going to do for you. And so this is an area where we will continue to invest over and over again to get better and better at this. And we'll do it by improving each of the independent capabilities, as well as adding additional techniques to that list in order to keep getting better at these things. Now, with all of that combined, one of the really interesting things that, and we really showcased this last year with you, was we could take all that data and actually make use of it. And that's where AutoFocus comes into the picture. With AutoFocus, we can take everything that we've ever processed in WildFire, and we can then basically expose that to you. Expose it to you in order to be able to find the really important things. Expose it to you in order to provide you a lot of context about who's behind the attacks. And hopefully this doesn't happen, but if you're in a situation where you find yourself responding to something, give you as much context about what you're responding to. And we've seen all of these use cases play out in WildFire since we launched it a few months ago. And with the latest release of PanOS and Panorama, we've now incorporated AutoFocus information into PanOS and Panorama, meaning if you're looking at a log, you can actually then ask the device to get the context out of AutoFocus for you without having to switch screens, and vice versa. If you're in AutoFocus, looking at something you find really interesting, without switching screens, you can say, I want to know this ever happened in my environment. And so we've connected the dots between AutoFocus back into your network environment and endpoint environment as well. So really excited about adding that to the list of things that AutoFocus is capable of doing. And just two more thoughts on AutoFocus real quick. One, I mentioned WildFire before and the scale that that's at. We passed a really interesting milestone just a few weeks ago with AutoFocus. We now have more than 1 billion files that have been analyzed and are now stored within the AutoFocus environment, which translates into hundreds of billions of artifacts that are all effectively correlated immediately whenever you're looking at something within AutoFocus. It's just amazing context that we can bring to bear from a security perspective. And so for that reason, we definitely see it as something that really attaches to WildFire in a way. Every time you're using WildFire, AutoFocus should be there hand in hand to be able to provide you that broader context of what you're looking at. Now, even with that much data, we are self-aware enough to understand that we don't hold all the data. They're not even close. And so one of the really interesting things that the team's been working on over the last several months is how to pull in additional data sources to the platform. And so we've come up with this new tool. It's free. You can go get it off of our community site called Meld. And basically what it does is it can go mine pretty much any data source you might have. This might be threat intelligence feeds. It could be open source feeds. It could be internal feeds. It could be whatever you have that has some semblance of threat intelligence. It can go mine that, analyze it and parse it, and turn it into actionable content that can then go and automatically update your security infrastructure. And to make this even better, we've extended in PanOS 7.1 and Panorama 7.1 the external dynamic block list capability to not only support IP addresses, but it now supports URLs and domain names in order to be more flexible in the kind of data it can ingest, right? So we, as a completely not talked about, not announced, open source tool, in just the last several weeks, we've now seen well over 100 of all of you download it and start to use it, and we're really excited to see that spread over time. So a lot of stuff happening from a threat intelligence cloud perspective. Now, I want to finish by talking about endpoint protection, and this is a very critical part of the platform because there are certain attacks, particularly advanced targeted attacks, where the endpoint is in a very unique and important place to be able to prevent them, different than the network. And so Traps is very important to how we're able to accomplish this overall goal of prevention. Now, to take a step back, this is my view, based on talking to many of you, of what a typical endpoint looks like today. There's lots of stuff, lots of agents. Some of them security, some of them not so much, but there's just lots of stuff. And all that stuff loads down the CPU and memory and disk I/O, and yet it's not really effective from a security perspective. And so as we look at this, as we look at everything, we're not going to try to do everything, we're going to try to focus. And our focus is going to be the following three things. First, we're going to focus on real value add. We're going to focus on how we can prevent some of the most advanced targeted attacks. That's first and foremost our goal with Traps, is to be able to do this. Second, because of the problem I just mentioned, we're very focused on being able to replace those legacy agents that are weighing the endpoint down. And while this may not be as much fun for us, we think it's really important in order to be able to provide an overall better user experience while providing the incremental benefits from a security perspective. And lastly, we do remain committed and focused on extending the operating systems that we support over time. So this is directional statements about where we're going with Traps and what we're focused on. Now, just to put this a little bit more in context, as we've talked about before, from an endpoint security perspective, there are basically two ways in which an attacker will try to compromise an endpoint. They'll exploit it, or they'll use malware, or they might use a combination of the two. Traditionally, host IPS is what you use to try to prevent the exploits. We know that doesn't work, particularly against new zero-day exploits, and use signatures to try to block viruses. We also know that doesn't work well, we just know it doesn't work. What Traps has been focused on is, in both of these areas, how do we really bridge some of those gaps? And so, as you know, from an exploit protection perspective, what we did is we said, what if you could block the exploit techniques? Because if you could do that really well, not only would you block known exploits, you'd be able to block zero-day exploits as well. And then from a malware perspective, we said, well, let's integrate with WildFire, and which we did, and that provides pretty good prevention and really good detection. And as I just mentioned before, with a lot of the improvements we've made to WildFire, that piece just keeps getting better. Now, here's the problem. If an application is run for the first time on an endpoint that happens to be malicious, and WildFire hasn't seen it, that is detection, not prevention. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, our passion is how to take detection and make it prevention, not take detection and make it manual response. So I look at this and say, well, it's good that we detected it, but I really want to prevent it. And so now we're getting to the piece I mentioned at the very beginning, which is I want to give you a sneak preview of something that we've been working on that we think is really important. All right? So what we're going to do is, in addition to connecting Traps up to WildFire and getting all the goodness of WildFire, we're going to give Traps its own local engine. This engine is going to be a combination of static analysis, leveraging machine learning and the billion-plus files we've analyzed in order to be able to have an immediate local verdict of anything that is not already known to WildFire as either good or bad. This way, if anything comes through that is unknown, we can immediately make it known and take action, and not have that cycle of, hey, we just detected something bad, you should go do something about it. So how does this look? Well, today, this is what Traps basically does. The dark blue are sort of table stakes, and from a malware prevention perspective, it pretty much relies on WildFire and the connection of WildFire. And like I said, this is not a bad thing. This is a great thing for anything that we previously know about. And even for unknowns, it's great because it means more and more is feeding up into WildFire. But what we're going to add to this is a combination of trusted signer capability in order to make sure we don't block anything that's really good, combined with this static analysis leveraging machine learning and all the data we have up in the cloud to keep that training model updated, so that whenever we're processing a new application, we can leverage a combination of these capabilities and not be dependent on any one technique. Kind of like I was mentioning with WildFire, having multiple techniques is a really good thing from an accuracy and coverage perspective. Same thing applies on the endpoint. And so, coming soon, be patient, but really excited about what this will do from an endpoint security perspective and taking it a step further, all right? So with that, I want to come back to sort of where I started. We have an amazing set of product updates that I was able to share some of them with you today, and there's a lot more. And so first, I want to encourage you to really, go find your Palo Alto Networks counterparts and have them show you demos of the new things we're doing. See it firsthand. A lot of really amazing capabilities here. And I wish I could have shared all of them with you today, but I wasn't able to. But really amazing. Hope you're excited as I am about this.